set up. So today I thought I was kind of asked to paint a palette knife painting, and I thought when you paint roses like this one here, this is a photo I took of some roses that you know, just from like Safeway or something, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of show you a little palette knife painting using the rose as an example of how you can paint a palette knife painting pretty easily, using, you know, your palette knife and the different variations of pink. I thought it would be kind of fun. So I've got out my paints here. You can see them lined up, and up here is Indian yellow and cad yellow medium. Here, I'll lift it up so the camera can get it better. But I just got a little dab of everything, sort of like sap green, viridian, transparent red oxide, brown oxide, a little bit of ultramarine, alizarin, and to get that pink, you really have to use this quinacridone red, or if you don't have quinacridone red, you got to put out some permanent rose. Otherwise, I've seen beginners try to make pink with alizarin, and it just gets, it doesn't make a bright pink. A little bit of orange there, and then I've got, this is some cobalt blue and some yellow ochre and some raw sienna. So, and then of course white, and then there's some grays there that I don't even know if I'll use, but you never know. They're just kind of there from before. And oh yeah, and there's some black up here. So to start off, I want to get a little wash going, and I'm going to start off with a little bit of something different. I'm going to use some of this Indian yellow and some quinacridone red, just to get sort of, just to block in where the rose is going to go. And I want to put it right onto the white. You know, if you've seen me paint before, I quite often do like a gray wash, but when I'm going to do something really pink like this, I really want to get that white surface underneath, so it's really clean and the pink can really stand out. So you'll notice when I'm blocking in, I'm paying attention still to the overall edges. Like what I see is sort of a triangle going one way and a little bit of a triangle of petals going another way. So I'm paying attention to that a little bit when I block in. And so once you get sort of the gist of it there, then you can go in with some darker paint around it, because you want to get something darker around it in order for your light pinks to show up later on. So I'll even take my paper towel and just sort of fold it, kind of create a little edge, and you can even kind of look at your picture, and this reference photos for my Patreon channel. It's going to be below when I post to Patreon, you'll see it. And you can kind of mark off where some of those lighter shapes, if it doesn't pull enough paint off, just dip it in the turp a bit more, and then you can kind of lift off some of those, where those lighter spots will go, so that you can already sort of get an idea of where your painting is going with value, so you can see the lights and the darks a bit. And I really enjoy doing that. It actually kind of gets you warmed up for painting as well. Like you can sort of get that, you know, get your mind in that artistic side quicker without messing up your paint too much. And you can start to see the shape of your rose a bit, so you can kind of expand on some of it that you want a little bigger, and just sort of, you know, you can even use it to sort of help your drawing a bit. So just a fun way to start. And then I'm going to go in and I'll get some of this sap green. Now, the brand of sap really makes a big difference. This sap green I'm using is quite a bit like brighter, and I normally use the Rembrandt sap green, and it's a lot darker, so I'll just add a little tiny bit of black to that mix. And a little bit of that transparent red oxide also will knock that bright green down. And then I'm just adding a little bit of terp from my terp char to get it to spread a bit better. So I'm just going to go around and kind of loosely, I'm looking at that reference photo, and I'm just going to block in some of that darker color around there. That also helps me to correct my drawing, because I can see that that petal there comes out a bit more than I had. It also helps like with your composition, because you can kind of see, you know, sometimes I get a little overly excited and I paint the rose way too far to the edges, and then it doesn't fit. So I tend to do that with things I really like. I draw them a little too big. It's probably a common thing. So it helps me kind of adjust things while the paint's really thin. And you can do this with anything you paint, really. Do this with birds or whatever you're painting, you can kind of block it in like this. This gives you a lot of room now to work with your palette knife and add some of those edges. So now once I get all that in, I know that this canvas is just like a canvas board, so it doesn't absorb a lot of the paint. So what I'm going to do is I can kind of see that when I go to put palette knife work on a really wet edge, it can kind of be like, it just kind of doesn't grip. So I'll go and get one of these paper towels, and I can just sort of, I'm going to just sort of muck up the background a bit anyways with it. And that kind of will take away some of that extra, terp. And then you can always go and just use your finger or make another little point and just sort of, you just want to kind of dry up the edges a little bit if it's too terpy. But if you're using acrylic, for example, you're fine. This is thin a layer, probably be fine. And I probably would too. I just know that it's a common thing for when I've taught in real person classes that can be a problem. It's just too much terp can get everything to slide too much. So now I feel confident that those edges they're dry enough that it's not going to get too slippery. So now for palette knife, I can go and I can start using a palette knife already if I'm making a palette knife painting. So I can go in, and what I might do is just add a little bit more dark paint in the center. So I'll go get a little bit more of that quinacridone red, maybe add a little bit of alizarin to that, and just sort of put in a little bit of that where it's going to be really dark, just because when I start adding the palette knife marks, then they'll show up more. So I'm just kind of looking at my reference and putting in a bit of those darks in there. And I'll put a few marks in the background of that pink, just for fun. Okay, now I'm going to mix up some paint. So I'm going to get some white, and let me just get this in front of the camera. It's always hard for me to know the best way to film these videos because you just have to play with it, and I'm not an expert at the art of video filming, so kind of have to be creative there. But there's some white and quinacridone red and a little bit of this orange. You don't want to add any alizarin to this at this point because it would really dull the pink down. And you can try it out and see what you think, but for me it's a real joy killer. So I'm just gonna go and now try it out. So you gotta kind of see, you want sort of a mid-tone range, so you kind of want to go and just add some of that onto your canvas. And I start kind of on the edge and draw it in because I don't want to put it on the dark and then pull it out because that would really zap my shadows. And you got to be prepared when you're doing palette knife for a much looser looking painting. So you're not going to, be able to control everything the way you would with a paintbrush. But that's okay, because that's, if you wanted to go in and fix it something, you can with your brush, obviously. There's no strict rules, but it's sort of one of those things you have to get used to. So I'm just looking at some of the major petals, and I'm putting in some of those strokes. So I'm looking at like this leaf here and putting that in. You can kind of pick out the edges of some of these ones as you get in here. There's going to be more kind of an edge. So I'm just going to put some kind of edgy marks there. And you get the texture of the canvas in there and everything. So now that's another thing to think about when you pick your surface to do a palette knife. You may want a smoother surface like a board or something that doesn't have as much of the toothy texture, but some people enjoy that too because then it grips more paint, so you can layer a lot more paint on there. So now I want to, I can blend a bit here. And then I like to sometimes mix it up, so I will sometimes use my brush a little. So I tend to do even with my palette knife painting, I'll go in and sort of use a brush a little bit here and there. I don't want to ruin the looseness of it though, so I'll kind of make a few. You can smooth a few of these lines out. Just take your brush, and then what I do is I'll wipe it off in between. And I like that kind of glow that's coming from that bright underpaint. So you can play around with that. And then what I'm going to do is just sort of bring that out a little. All right, so now this is sort of a mid-tone pink. I'm going to mix up a lighter pink for the highlights. So I'm going to get some of that white and some of that quinacridone red and a little bit of that orange in there just to get it to really stand out. And then it's not my highlight yet. I'm just sort of testing out the brightness. So I can put some of that here and there. And then just got to add a little more white to get that to be brighter. And you can use a little bit of that Indian yellow in the white so it just warms up that highlight a bit. So you can see it has a bit of that Indian yellow in the mix. It kind of warms that pink up. And you can test it out and see if you like it. I think I'll make a pile of it that's got more white in it. And then I'm going to start putting in some of those little highlights. So when you're putting on an edge, you want to make sure the edge of your palette knife has paint on it. So, you know, I dab the edge of it and then I'll go in and sort of try to make that mark. So now you got that highlight that's on the edge of the flower. So I'm going to go do the same, to kind of dab that edge of the palette knife, and then I'm going to use the flat part and then draw in some of that with the edge like this. And put a highlight down here. And it's actually really a nice feeling putting on the paint so thick like this. It's like putting icing on a cake. And up here, those highlights on the edges of that rose petal up there. And there. And just sort of look at your reference and draw some of that in there. And now you really start to see it come to life with all the different layers. And just kind of go around and look at where you need to kind of add more. And then I've got this other darker pink. I can go back in now and get in some of that center. So it gives you a totally different feel when you paint with your palette knife. And then I'll do the same with the background. I'll go get some sap and a little bit of this cad yellow, and you can get a really nice green mixing those two together. And even just to dull it a bit, add some of that transparent red oxide. And you can keep dulling it down with more red oxide till you get more of like an army green. It's just really comes down to your preference. Some people like the green to be really like kind of almost gray, so you just have to keep adding more. So I'm going to just add a few blobs of that thicker green paint here and there. That way your painting is consistent. You know, otherwise you'll have like all this thin paint around. Just going to add a little yellow ochre into that mix, and you can take the leaf and put a little highlight of that on there. Just kind of get some more yellow ochre in there, and just kind of add some really nice greens here and there. And I like to really kind of even get some of that edge mixed in a bit, so it's really connecting the background to the rose. And you can scratch it in a few lines into the petals, or bring some of the petals out into the painting. And if you don't like one, like, you just go back in and fix it with some paint. And then I'll take a little pink and put a little dab here and there into the background, just to sort of make it more fun. And just take a look at my reference photo, and wherever you need to expand a petal or something, you just look at your reference, and then you can just add it in. You got so much paint on there now, you can kind of do whatever you want. And then you can always get a little bit of black and some of that, you know, viridian, something to really get a dark in there, and put a few of the dark greens back in. That way you get some real nice contrast to put in that brighter. So this is a really, you know, kind of quick version of what you can do, but you can see it gives you a real much looser painting. Now you can go in with your paintbrush and just add a few details, add a few real darks in there, but careful not to mix it too much at this stage so you lose the whole palette knife look. But I'll put in a few real darker spots here and there to kind of also kind of keep with the style, kind of keep them loose. So it's kind of a fun painting to try, and you know, you could see this in a large scale with lots of roses would be really pretty. When you just do a single rose like this, it's maybe not the best style for a rose portrait like this. But if you were doing a nice, you know, larger canvas with quite a few roses, then this style would really look good for, you know, something kind of more decorative. So I really like it. I have done a large rose painting. Maybe I'll add that photo to my Patreon channel. I don't usually show it off to anyone, but it's really big, so it's always in my house. Sometimes I can't fit it, but I keep it wherever I move to. So, all right, so you can always just get a few more highlights in the center there. And with roses, you just kind of have to keep it loose because they're one of the more challenging flowers I find to paint. I know some people, that's their main flower. Mine is obviously the sunflower, but definitely roses you have to work at. But for this style, definitely I hope you give this a try and post a picture of it to the Bold Strokes page, and let me see what you did with this one. Happy painting, everyone.